Welcome to Navigating Consumer and Family Law Challenges. Insights from SoCal's trusted attorneys.
Welcome to Navigating Consumer and Family Law Challenges, Insights from SoCal's trusted attorneys with Amanda Hill and Sara Khosrabadi. With a focus on family law, consumer protection, and employment law, Amanda and Sara offer helpful, caring, and professional legal services and advice. I'm your host, John Clements, and today we're going to discuss scammed and sued, what to do when you're hit by fraud and a lawsuit. So first of all, Sara, welcome back.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Glad to be back.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk with you today. This is an important subject because it does happen to people, and I'm sure when it happens to you, you kind of don't know what to do. So I'm excited to talk through some of these issues with you. So let's get started. What are some of the most common scams that lead people to be sued, especially, say, identity theft or contract fraud?
So typically when clients are being sued, it's usually, well, at least in my office, it's usually because there's some debt that has been created and hasn't been paid. So for instance, a credit card that is opened with Bank of America, Chase, Wells Fargo, and that bank, that credit card hasn't been paid off. So what ends up happening is the bank then either sends that to a collection agency to collect on their behalf, like Midland, Portfolio. Those are just a couple that I can think of now. Or what they do is they'll actually send it to their own counsel. So they'll send it to a law firm, and that law firm will file that lawsuit and collect on behalf of the bank. And so most of the common things I see, especially with regards to fraud, is somebody else opened up that account. You had no idea about it, so you wouldn't have paid that debt off. And now you're being sued for the debt that you didn't even know about. So that's usually what comes through our door.
Oh, so have you had clients in the past who they call you and they say, I literally got this notice and I'm being sued and I have no idea what's going on? Like, is that what happens?
I have, yeah. I've had clients call us and say, I don't even know what this account is. I am not sure who opened up this account. Usually typically the what ends up happening is there's no information given, and then all of a sudden that lawsuit's filed against you, you get served with documents. Or what I've really had in the past is also default judgments. So not only did you not know that there was a debt, you didn't even know there was a lawsuit that was filed against you. And then somebody else got served, or service didn't really happen for that lawsuit. And then 5, 6 years down the road, you're now getting, a judgment against you, or somebody's coming after you for the judgment and saying you owe this money, and there was already adjudication in court, and you're like, I didn't even know this existed. So yeah, we've had that come through the
Oh
door
my
a lot.
gosh. I mean, so then what do you do? Like, let's say that that's me and I'm calling like, Sara, what do I even do? Like, where do you even
Yeah.
start with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So typically, what we do in our office is, if you hired us as an attorney, or if you hire any attorney, you're going to have two different cases going. So one is going to be the underlying case where they're filing the lawsuit against you. And then typically, what ends up happening in my office is we let the debt collector know that the client is a victim of fraud. This isn't their account. Sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't. We have the client go through the fraud dispute at the same process that we've talked about before as far as fraud's concerned, where you contact the FTC, you let them know that you're a victim of fraud, you fill out the form, and then you send that over to the debt collector, and or in this case the attorney for the debt collector. Then they have to do an investigation. So if they do the investigation properly, sometimes they'll just dismiss the case. Sometimes they don't. So then we end up having to file a lawsuit against the company. So now you've got your state court action where they're suing you for the debt, and then you've got your action either in federal court or arbitration where you're filing a lawsuit against them. So it does definitely get tricky.
Yeah, it sounds like I can't imagine. I mean, I don't even want to go through like one lawsuit, much less two at a
Well,
time.
yeah,
So you
exactly.
said, I kind of can't believe this. You just said that when we call these collections agencies, sometimes they listen to us, sometimes they don't. Like that blows my mind because like you're a lawyer. If a lawyer called
Mhm.
me, I would listen. So I mean, why would a debt collection not listen to you?
There's multiple factors. I mean, some of the debt collection companies, I don't want to be disparaging and call them a mill, but that kind of is what's happening. Is there's just a lot of employees, a lot of people in that group, a lot of cases that come on their desk, and sometimes they don't have the opportunity to review it, or they go back to their client and their client says, no, we don't agree. So it's maybe not the law firm that says that we're going to go forward with this for no reason, but it's actually the client, the bank, that says we don't have any information with regards to that. So we're going to go forward with the lawsuit. I mean, again, it sometimes it comes off where it's like, absolutely, yeah, you're right. We've got enough evidence to show that our client is a victim of identity theft. And sometimes it's hard. It's really hard to gather that evidence. So in order to get them to understand what's happening with regards to the fraud, it takes a little bit of time.
Yeah, and I'm glad you pointed out the evidence piece of it. So, yeah, I guess that does make sense if you're presenting,
Hmm.
an overwhelming case, even over the phone or whatever. It's like, all right, clearly, yes. But I suppose, yeah, if the evidence is lacking, maybe that is
Hmm.
a response you might expect.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so let's say that, I get served papers and it's tied to some fraudulent activity that I had no idea about, like we've been talking about. I mean, is my first step to call you? I mean, what is my first step?
Typically, yes, I would recommend getting the advice of an attorney immediately. That way, you're making sure you're doing all the steps correctly. But if you decide you don't really want to hire an attorney right away, you still want to go through the same steps of doing the FTC affidavit. You still want to do the, notifying the law firm and or the bank, whoever is filing the lawsuit, that you are a victim of identity theft. I always recommend putting everything in writing. So even if you call, email them, send them a letter, send them a certified letter, whatever it is that's necessary for you to be able to have that evidence that you did tell them, one, and two, that you gave them everything possible in order for them to do their investigation. But I would say a lot of our clients, they get really frustrated by the process because nobody listens. And now you've contacted them 5, 6, 7 times, or it's taken 6, 7 months to be able to get through this process. And having an attorney, not that it makes it any faster, I think it just sometimes gives you a sense of relief because somebody else is handling that rather than you having to be the one that's in it all the time. So,
Yeah, I can imagine. I'd gladly hire you to take care of this and be the point person so I can.
yeah,
I'm probably already thinking about it 24 hours a day anyway, but at least now I have help.
exactly. Yeah.
So let me ask you this because it sounds like, based on what we just talked about, sometimes these lawsuits might drag on. Maybe not always, but maybe in some cases they do. And I was just curious, like the longer that a case might drag on, does that have any bearing on, okay, on whether or not you see a success? Like the longer it goes, might you see a higher success rate, or is that not a correlation?
Yeah, good question. So it can have some bearing on it. Obviously, the more information there is with regards to what happened and how long the process took for the client prior to hiring an attorney or filing the lawsuit, the longer it's going to take with the lawsuit itself or the arbitration. What I mean by that is sometimes we do have to get other people involved. If the client has talked to 4 or 5 different representatives at the bank or 4 or 5 different representatives at the collection agency, we're going to want to talk to those collection agents or the agents there, and we're going to want to get information as to what's going on, why they didn't do what they were supposed to do, what their policies were, what the procedures were, why they didn't listen to the client, right? Those are called depositions. So we may take many depositions in a case where there's a lot of contact. Also, sometimes, when it takes a lot longer, it's because the client is not willing to settle for a low figure. And it does put a higher threshold, I guess, on how long the case will take because of the fact that the defendants are not willing to cash out that much without getting as much evidence as possible as to what they did. So they do sometimes push us a little further when we're asking for a reasonable compensation for clients that have been through a lot.
I see. Yeah, and I am curious to know because I'm sure you deal with clients who have been through a lot. Do you have a story? Like, what's your favorite story about helping a client out and getting them resolution to being scammed and sued?
Yeah, about many of those. One of the ones that most recently comes to mind is a client who was she was dealing with a lot of concerns with the bank, and it just wasn't her account at all. She had never opened the credit card, and she was working with the bank, really actually trying to work with the bank for about, I think it was like 6 months, calling them, letting them know that she was a victim and that she didn't really know how else to fix this. And they were actually very nice and sympathetic and kept saying, "We're looking into it, we're looking into it." But when we got to the actual meat of it and filed the lawsuit, because she got fed up at that point, filed the lawsuit, we found that they weren't really paying attention to it as much as they should have. So she was calling in. they weren't even, putting in notes as to what she was saying. It just kind of was like this repetitive thing. So at some point, she gets to tell her story about what's happening, and gets to really lay that out there. And I think that there's some therapeutic relief that comes from being able to say, you wronged me. I tried to do what I was supposed to do. You didn't listen, right? And you acted as if you listened, especially in this one. And then being able to say that and get your piece out there, and then finding resolution as well, as far as, kind of, I don't like saying, I usually use the whole David and Goliath analogy as far as like what we're doing here, but kind of, yeah, getting that sense of relief as to somebody finally listened and you're now vindicated as to what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with that. I've never, fortunately, I've never had to, call someone like you to deal with that situation, but I certainly
Hmm.
have felt the relief of finally someone is listening to me, right? After
Hmm.
being
Yeah.
ignored. Oh my gosh. I can imagine that both you and the client felt pretty good about that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. So with that client, or just with any client in particular, after that was resolved successfully, were you able to get those fraudulent charges kind of removed from their credit report and like from the court record?
Yeah, so not necessarily with the court record. Once we file something, it is definitely permanently there, but it's a good thing that it's there because other people look at it and can kind of say, "Oh, that happened to somebody else, and that's definitely happening to me." So I'm on the right track here. But as far as the credit reports, yes. So when we file the lawsuit, we want to make sure that one, the charges are reversed, the client's not responsible for those charges anymore, that account is closed, and that doesn't happen to them again. And then we also, especially for filing under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, where there was something on the credit report, we ask that that is either suppressed or removed from the credit reports, depending on who the defendant is. But yeah, that's the whole goal, right? You're under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, you're supposed to have an accurate credit report. So if you're a victim of identity theft, somebody else used your information to get a credit card, a loan, whatever it is, and that was put on your credit and is harming you, then you have a right to get that taken off. So, absolutely, that's one of the main things that we focus on. And it's actually one of the most important things for the clients, too, is getting that fixed, getting it off of their credit report, and making sure that their hard work shows with what, in their credits, their credit score,
Yeah,
and on their
I
credit
feel like
report.
yeah, I feel like life is hard enough without having to deal with that kind of stuff. So
Hmm.
someone who can like come
Absolutely.
alongside to help you get rid of it, I think is great. How about consumer protection laws? Because those exist, and that's part of it. I think is like the Fair Credit Act. How else
Hmm.
do these consumer protection laws kind of help people who are dealing with fraud or even financial harassment?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I kind of jokingly call it the alphabet soup because there are so many different statutes out there that we can use for consumers. For instance, EFTA is one of them, the EFTA. That's the Electronic Transfer Funds Act. So if somebody's taking money out of your bank account and it's fraudulent, you have a right to go to the bank and say, "Hey, give me back my money," do an investigation. I'm a victim of fraud. And if they don't, then you can file a lawsuit. There's the Fair Credit Billing Act, so the FCBA. That one deals with credit cards. So kind of similar to EFTA, but if it's a credit card and somebody used your credit card and there's unauthorized charges there, you get to go and dispute it. If the bank doesn't do the dispute process accurately and remove those, then you can file a lawsuit under that. And then we have the FDCPA, which is the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, which deals with how collection companies, and well, mostly collection companies, how they collect from you. So they can't call you deadbeat. They can't call your parents or your neighbors or send you things in the mail saying that you owe money, loud and clear on the envelope saying that you owe money. They can't harass you. And I'm really grateful for these statutes because they definitely do keep debt collection companies in line. They still violate the law. We still file plenty of lawsuits. So I can't imagine what would happen if these laws weren't there. But there's the Fair Credit Reporting Act, like you mentioned, that helps with credit bureaus, credit reports. Good gosh, there's so many. California is actually amazing for consumers too. We have the California identity theft statute in and of itself that helps clients, so they can file a lawsuit even if there isn't anything else in the alphabet soup that they can use as far as a lawsuit's concerned. They can use the California identity theft statute. We also have a California equivalent to the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and that standard's a little bit less. It's actually, you can file a lawsuit against the furnisher, meaning the banks, the credit card companies whoever is the line item on the credit report and say, hey, you knew or you should have known that this information was inaccurate and I didn't even have to do a dispute. So it kind of lessens the steps that the consumer has to take too. So it's a great avenue to be able to file a lawsuit and get your credit cleared up. I think there's probably
Yeah.
more, but that's literally the alphabet soup there. So
Yeah, I love your point that these laws help keep the collection companies in check, but I'm sure that they don't always follow the law in every single instance. I'm sure there's at least one time where they haven't.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
more than one time.
Um, so when I listen, like I am totally fascinated by this discussion because I'm not personally affected, but like it gives me ammunition and hope that if it ever happens to me, I know what to do. But there's probably someone listening right now who's in the middle of it and doesn't feel that hope. They feel overwhelmed, is my guess, and they just don't know what to do. So to that person, what advice would you give them? How would you help them take that first step to get out of overwhelm, to start working toward justice and a resolution?
Really good question too. I definitely feel for the clients that call us. Anybody who calls us and says, "Hey, I'm a victim of identity theft." It's a real violation of your privacy. You've got somebody out there who's pretending to be you. You've got somebody out there who is kind of stealing from you as well, right? And then now you're having to deal with companies where you can't get through to them. You can't get them to understand. It's really affecting your life as far as your credit reports or buying a home or buying a car, whatever it is that you're looking at doing, even renting an apartment. If that's on your credit report, they sometimes will say no, especially if you have a lot of debt on your credit reports. So I would say, take a breath, make a timeline. Keep notes about what you're doing, keep notes about who you're calling. Definitely, if you can, if you don't feel overwhelmed by it immediately, contact an attorney. Most of us will do it on a contingency fee basis, meaning we don't charge you. And I think that that's a common misconception is, oh, if I hire an attorney, it's going to be so expensive for me. But like my office, for instance, on most of our cases, we do it on a contingency fee basis. So we don't charge you out of pocket at first. What ends up happening is these statutes have fees allocations or fee shifting statutes, which basically means we can get our fees if we win from the other side. So contact an attorney, at least get some information as to what's happening. I've recently had a call where I couldn't help the client today because they were in the middle of it. They were really in the middle of it, and the bank technically hadn't done anything wrong yet. So I was able to send them over to the Identity Theft Resource Center here in San Diego. Is a really good resource as well to be able to use and find out what can you do as far as making all the consequences of identity theft stop. How to get the person to stop using your bank account, even if the bank isn't stopping them from doing it. How to get them to stop opening up new accounts that you have no control over. Even if you try to freeze your credit reports or try to freeze with the three bureaus, sometimes hackers are getting so sophisticated that they'll go in and they'll unfreeze it. And so how do you deal with that? So the Identity Theft Resource Center is a great place to reach out to just say, hey, what do I do about my social security number? How do I fix how do I deal with the IRS as far as this is concerned? But I definitely would say reach out to somebody, reach out to either the Identity Theft Resource Center or an attorney that does this and try to get the information from them. They'll take you step by step as to what needs to happen.
Great. Well, that's a great place to end the show this week. Great advice. Reach out to someone. Don't do it on your own. You don't have to.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sarah, for being just having a great conversation today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks.
Yeah, and to our listeners, thank you for joining us on Navigating Consumer and Family Law Challenges, Insights from SoCal's Trusted Attorneys with Amanda Hill and Sara Khosrabadi. To connect with their firm, visit knhlawgroup.com. And as always, like, subscribe, leave a review, and until next time, have a great day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.